All right. Hello, everyone. It's Michele Maher here, and I'm joined with Jean Leggett today. Thank you so much, Jean, for giving me your time to come on to my Pivot with Positivity show to talk about keeping a positive mindset while pivoting in your life and your business. So thank you, Jean. If you want to give us a few words about who you are and what you are all about.
Thanks so much for having me on the show, Michele. I am so pleased that you asked because I'm all about the positivity, as you know, from my previous life and now my current life. I run a small video game startup. We make video games, but we also teach people how to make their own games. And I've been doing that for the last 6.5 years. But for the 12 years since now, I've also been a professional coach. And for a long time, and you probably know me from having done joy and laughter coaching when we used to live in Barrie together. That was my shtick, that was my thing. And now I'm bringing video game developers and joy together in one place as a career coach and a business development coach.
All right. Well, that's great. That's great, Jean. So as we were saying before we came on camera here, I just found myself really being sucked into the fear at the beginning and feeling like I was living in a movie when things were getting shut down. I know for myself, like when the NBA was shut down and the sports were all shut down, that was like huge. Even though I'm not even a sports fan, I just knew that that's like so serious. So I found myself, I got sucked right into the whole grocery store fiasco and things like that. Not toilet paper as such, but I did go to Costco on the Friday after, which was Friday the 13th of March, and did a big, filling up my cart thing with other people, 2 hours in line or whatever it was. And then, of course, I headed to the liquor store after to make sure because I did have a concern it might be closing. So anyhow, but then I thought, you know what, this is just craziness. I can't stay in this. I can't be fearful, like what's going to happen and things like that. I have to do something to serve others and something where we can all come together. And that's why I started doing these interview programs in the first place. And it just, we had to go through the kind of fear at the beginning, of course, but you can't stay there and you don't want to stay there. And so I found getting up and getting dressed in the morning and everything just really helped me to, the same time every morning, getting up and getting dressed and ready for the day as though I were going to work really helped me. I probably do that more now than I ever did, even, when I was working from home before COVID. Now it's like very regimented. So
I can't say that I had that level of discipline. I have worked from home for the last 7 years, and my favorite days are the days where I don't have to set my alarm and I can just wake up when I feel like it and just roll into my desk. I have worn a lot of yoga pants this year. In fact, I dressed up and I put my face on for you because normally when I'm doing an interview, it's just over a podcast. But underneath this blouse and this makeup is yoga pants. But I agree with you. I think in the beginning, there definitely was this element of fear. We've never gone through this together in our current history. They talk about the pandemic that happened in the Spanish flu of 1912 or 1918, I think it was.
Yeah, 18. So it's 100 years, over 100 years.
It's been 100 years. And we live in this space with social media, and then you have all these people panicking and giving out all this wrong information. We're nesters, my husband and I. We're not social people. We don't really go out, especially because we moved to a new city, and we'd only been here, I think, maybe 6 months, 6 to 9 months when COVID hit. So it's not like we were doing a lot of external things. And I remember going, okay, how much milk can I put in the fridge so that I can minimize the number of times that I leave the house, right? Like, what's the longest period of time if we can serve? Because we didn't know how viral or how lethal this thing was, how fatal this thing was. And so I think we were at like 15 to 18 days we could go for grocery runs. That's how crazy we it was very intense. We stocked up on all the things. But I think that you hit something on the head, which is the scarcity piece. And I don't know if you've had this conversation with your other guests, but clearly people who can afford to go to the grocery store once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, they have privileges that other people don't. So if you're on a very tight budget and you don't have a lot of savings, it's like you have to go to the grocery store every couple of days because you never have access to that big hoard of cash to be able to go and do a $300, $400, $500 run at Costco. And so for me, as we've gone through and continued through this pandemic, and we've seen Black Lives Matter stuff happening and everything that's been happening, the civil unrest, it's just made me really more deeply aware about the privileges. Like even us being able to work from home is a massive privilege. There's so many people that they would never be able to do their jobs from home. And so it's been a deeper appreciation and awakening for the things that I took for granted before in my life.
Right. I totally agree with that as well. There's so many things that that we do realize now that we took for granted. And touching on some of what you were saying too, in terms of social media, I think that has made a huge difference. Even when you look at this, obviously Spanish flu was 1918 was a whole different world. But if you go back to when we had SARS here, and we had, it was pretty bad in Toronto in terms of the, we had quite a few cases here. And I know that I have a friend who works as a nurse in Sunnybrook, and I think she went through the whole thing. But we didn't have the social media to the extent we do now. And I think that throwing in social media to this whole mix really highlighted a lot of judgment. I think, there was a lot of judgment, like you say, misinformation, but also like spreading the fear and it just
fear sells,
really magnified,
right? Well, when you think about modern marketing and psychology, the thing that gets people to click through that intense desire is like that curiosity of like, I don't know, this should tell me the answer and I want to know. But everything that we are seeing is being driven by fear-based clickbait. And it's so noisy. For the last 2 years, I went through my Facebook and I took everybody off my main news feed. So Michele, I have no idea what you're up to in your life unless I go to your page and look at what's happening in your life. And I did that for all 1,600 people. And then I trimmed my list down to 400 people. I only keep the people that I care about. So the fact that you're still on my list says a lot. And it's because there's so much noise and everybody wants to be heard, understood, and acknowledged. You know that military phrase, HUA? That's actually HUA, heard, understood, acknowledged. I heard your command, I understand what you're asking of me, and I acknowledge my responsibility in it. So that's military, but my personal philosophy is that we each need to be deeply heard, understood, and acknowledged. And we aren't doing that. And we certainly weren't doing that at the beginning of the pandemic because everybody was just like, ah. And now that we're coming into month 6, like today is October the 16th or October the 13th. And so it's been 6 months.
7.
Oh my God, it's 7.
7, yeah.
Holy bleep.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know about you, but at the beginning when they, I still have a daughter who's in high school. And so it was March break. First of all, her Europe trip was canceled.
Yeah.
She was supposed to go to Europe and that's a whole nother story because there's a huge blow up in terms of the insurance company fighting with the tour operator and nobody getting their refunds. Yeah. So anyhow, they closed, then they said the school would be shut down another 2 weeks. So April 6th, And then I think is when maybe that's when they shut down the nail salons and hair salons, and they said they were going to be shut down for a month. So we were thinking like May,
Yeah.
May,
Yeah.
and we would be, and everybody at even, everybody was saying back to normal when we get back to normal. And that was always
Yeah.
the thing.
Yeah.
And now we're at 7 months and we know that there is no back to normal.
Well, and in our preamble before you started recording, we've been talking about like what is normal anyways, and how our lives changed. So in the time between COVID canceling all of my international speaking opportunities, some of which were very, very big opportunities for me, I have transitioned, and I've been using my coaching skills to help people do personal branding, aka career coaching, to figure out where they position themselves in the video game industry, and also people outside of the industry. And so I've been able to pivot and do that, but also with the podcast that I started, which is called Games, Grit, and Gratitude, Real Talk. I'm trying to, in all of the things that I touch, is that piece of what are your core values? Why are you doing what you're doing? Why are you starting the business that you're doing? Why are you approaching your career in this perspective? Are you stopping to take time to think about what's important to you? And I think COVID has given us collectively this gift. There are a lot of other things that there are tremendous downsides to what has happened with COVID. And I talk about that in the first episode, because I think it's easy for us to go, oh, let's be positive. As a joy coach, which I did for a number of years, I was just like, joy, 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 joy. Everything should be positive. And then I realized we have to acknowledge the anger. We have to acknowledge the injustice, because if we choose to be blind to those things, then we're ignoring the reality of so many other people. And we can have deeper empathy if we understand why people are hurt. And so I look at COVID and I think, wow, I don't know if this has crossed your mind, Michele, but when I think about COVID, I think about people who they were just getting their hand up on that next rung of the ladder to move out of, say, poverty, and they were just making up here. And then COVID came along and maybe it took their job away from them or created huge financial instability. And next thing you know, they're knocked off that ladder and they've come tumbling back. And that will affect generations in their family. We're not seeing it affect people who are super wealthy because they had safeguards in place. Their homes are not affected, and all of these other things. So it's been, I think that's the place that really put me into a deep emotional spiral in the beginning of COVID. We were homeless last year for 2 months. I don't know if you remember that part of our story, but we ran our own company. We had a small amount of investment. And I say small because relatively to what happens in technology and video games, it was a small investment over a period of time. And the money ran out, and my husband and I were like, okay, well, we can't work on this full time anymore. We need to find jobs. In the meantime, there's no money. And we were homeless. And so there was a moment at the beginning of COVID where I realized, okay, well, you know what? We were homeless once before. It wasn't the end of the world, and we more than survived it. So I know to not be afraid of those things, because everything is survivable. It's just, I don't know about you, there are moments where in the past 7 months, I'm just so tired. I'm so tired of having to be resilient. It's exhausting.
Right. Yeah. We were just having a conversation about that this morning on my board meeting for a group that I'm a part of. And one of the women on there, she just said that she's just so tired. It's so hard to have the energy every single day to just go on with certain things, like to be positive and grow in your business and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that for myself, the one huge difference was when at the very beginning, again, when I was, it was all happening, and the news, the governments were doing their regular updates every day at 11 a.m. and it was 1 o'clock, I think, or something. And I was watching those. I was like glued to that, watching that, because at the beginning, everything was changing so quickly.
Yeah.
There's so many changes in that whole, I think the whole March break kind of, so many things changed every day, and it felt really, really long, almost like those 2 weeks, the last 2 weeks of March felt like they were 6 months long. But I, I'm not sure exactly when I stopped watching them, but it was probably sometime in April. But now I don't watch any news at all whatsoever. I don't even want to, I don't want to get sucked into that whole thing, because again, that's what they're selling. They're selling fear, and they want you to get,
I don't know if they're necessarily selling fear. I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to figure out what is the best and most effective way to communicate to people. And nobody having gone through this before, like I live on Twitter these days, right? I have my Facebook and I post things on Facebook like maybe once or twice a day, but on Twitter, I'm on there. I'm having conversations with my community around the world because I'm involved with game developers in Australia and Germany and in Latin America. And so I'm constantly, I live on Twitter, and I'll make the mistake of looking through, say, one of our politicians in Canada has posted something, and it doesn't even have to be COVID related, and then people will start dunking on them for how they've handled COVID.
True.
And I think what people fail to appreciate is perspective. We as a household, we're self-employed coming into this. And so CERB was a huge help to us in the beginning stages before I was able to pivot my business and start doing the consultations that I was doing as a coach. I went from coaching kind of casually in last year and into early of this year, and then COVID hit, and I ramped that sucker up. I've been more successful doing the private coaching in the past month than I have in for the years leading up to it, because I have been working so hard at it. And so COVID lit the fire of fear under me in a good way. But I think where people are getting tired and frustrated is that they don't have a sense of hope, right? It's worn us down to the point where we can't see the next week in front of us. I don't know how soon you air the episodes after our conversation, but it's October 13th. We're coming into the tail end of the year. I'm already planning to put my tree up early because I need some joy. But this is the prime time for us at the end of this year to be doing the reflective work of, here's everything that we've experienced. If you're not already, writing a gratitude journal really helps to be able to track all of the amazing things that have happened this year. It's so easy to look at this as the year of crap COVID, right? But on a day-to-day basis, you've had miracles happen, small miracles and big miracles. I lost my grandmother this year. We could not fly out to go see her, or to go to her funeral. And so we're saying, well, maybe I think we're like, oh, September, we'll do the funeral in September when COVID's all over. Yeah, we'll be lucky if we make it to next summer. And that's just the reality of it. What I want to do is I've pivoted my business because I needed to, and now I'm in that growth mindset of like, oh, that pivot worked. How can I expand this? How can I make this bigger? And what does 2021 look like? I was all set to have the best year of my life this year. Like, that's what it felt like coming into 2020. I had made the plans. The keynotes were falling into place with massive corporations, the biggest industry, or the biggest corporate companies in our industry. And you know what? This is different opportunities have presented themselves. And so I want to spend the rest of this year being deeply grateful and having a perspective. Okay, you've survived this. You've survived being homeless. You've survived having to pivot your business multiple times. What would happen if you started planning, not from a place of fear, but from hope? And that's the headspace that I'm in right now.
Right. I think you're not the only one. I've heard a lot of stories from so many people that heading into 2020 and setting the goals for the year back in January, looked, because for a lot of people, 2019 wasn't a good year.
Yeah, it was the worst year of my life. It really was. This is why this year has, it's had its hiccups, but 2019, I was homeless. My dad was sick for 5 months and he passed away. I have family drama that happens in that side of the family. It was the ugliest year of my life. And I thought, 2020 will be a breeze.
Right.
Different perspective.
And I think so many people did have that same vision, myself included. Last year wasn't the greatest year. I had a lot of issues going on, and this year I set these goals in 2020 that it was going to be such a great year to get my jewelry out there exposed and being worn at TIFF. That was my goal for 2020 as well. And of course that all changed with COVID, and I pivoted to doing these interviews as well as now focusing on myself as my whole brand, which is what when you're talking about the career coaching and everything, I think that we're going to see such a shift in the way that the old paradigms of you go to school, you go to university or college, you get this degree, you go off and do your job, you do that job for 25, 30 years, whatever.
That's long since shifted.
Yeah.
In the games industry, most people aren't even at the same studio for 2 years. And they might not even stay on the same track within their career. And it's been interesting because, I jokingly call myself like the old lady because I'm 43 and a lot of the people in the industry are under 28. And so it's perspective. If I could wave my magic wand, I don't mind not seeing people for long periods of time. If I could wave my magic wand, I'd like to have a house no more than 20 minutes outside of the city. I'd like to not see my neighbors. I'd like to have a little garden, and I would still like to have my internet though. But I'd like to be self-sustaining, and I would like to have a lower cost of living. Like, we don't need these 4,000 square foot houses that people are living in. We don't need to be such slaves to our work that everything that we have driven is driven because we want to buy something. If the only thing that we should really need for is some fulfillment and being able to pay the rent, like the basic things, the rent and the groceries and our medical expenses. But we've gotten trapped in this cycle of insanity that we have to be fulfilled by other things, and we haven't been doing the introspective work. So I think COVID's been really tough for a lot of people that are only just now starting to do the introspective work.
Right, exactly. And that was something that we spoke about. I've spoken about on a few of the episodes with different people. How before we were not ever living in the present. We were always worrying about what you have to do the next day or the next hour or whatever, or on the weekend, looking forward to whatever events were happening, things like that. But you never actually sat and were present, and never did we sit with ourselves and our thoughts. And COVID really gave you the time to actually sit and think about what's important to you, and how you were living your life before. Was it really serving you? Were you actually being true to yourself? And like you said, coming down to figuring out what your values are and what you stand for. Because everybody, even when even though you don't necessarily think about it, you do have values. Everybody operates by a certain standard of set values, and it's not something that everyone has necessarily thought about. And sometimes you end up doing something and going and following some career path that wasn't necessarily true to yourself, just because that was what you were, kind of conditioned to be the right way to go. Like even for myself, I went to school to get Bachelor of Commerce to be an accountant because, you know, I wanted to do fashion design, but I was kind of steered in the other direction because I wouldn't make any money if I went into design and, you know,
Yeah.
fashion. So
Honestly, it's I get it. I get it. And when you think about people who at the end of their lives when they're on their deathbed and they're doing that reflective work, the people that do the work that's in alignment with their hearts are the ones that have lived the happiest lives. And you don't have to have a lot of money in your bank account in order to be happy. I remember so our circumstances of becoming homeless are ridiculous and stupid. We were living in a converted apartment in somebody's house, and he was busted for having 2 illegal apartments, and I didn't know that they were illegal. And so he said, listen, I've been busted, you need to leave. And I said to Blair, you know, we haven't been happy here. Let's just do this. Like, let's go on a cross-country epic tour. And so we threw everything, we had stuff in storage already, because for 7 years we had half of our house in storage, because we downsized from like 1,400 square feet to 500 square feet, because we were only supposed to be in Barrie temporarily. And so we moved into a larger storage unit, and then we threw the rest of our stuff into it. And we packed up our car and we went on a 2-month multi-city road trip through Eastern United States and Canada. And we were going to do all of Canada, but then we got a job offer. And I just thought, I remember when we arrived at the cabin, a friend had lent us her cabin for a week. And technically we're homeless. We have no home. We don't know where we're going. And my husband turns to me and he says, I've never felt so free in my entire life, right? I don't know what's ahead for us, but I feel free. And that is a gift that we were fortunate to have, in that 2 months on the road together. It gave us a deep appreciation for, we're survivors. And humans in general are survivors.
right.
Our drug of choice collectively is hope. We want hope. And it's deeply unfortunate that the other drug that's been on the market lately is fear. And people are gravitating towards the fear because, I don't know if you know this, it triggers the same chemicals in our brains.
Right.
And there's more fear than there is hope. And so all you and I can do, Michele, is to get up in the morning and say, okay, today's a new day. And I might succeed at the task list that I have in front of me, whether that's just to get through the day or whether these are the steps that I need to make progress in my business. We might not have that success every single day. Some days might be, well, you know, I'm going to finish off that tub of ice cream and I'm going to watch Netflix today because that's where I'm at. And that's okay. But hopefully hope will win out and will keep us going. I have no idea how long it's going to take for this thing to end. I don't think anybody really knows. I am very deeply disturbed by people who say, well, we should just all get infected. They're very ignorant as to what would that mean and the number of fatalities. I think what we need to do is we need to reevaluate what's important to us. And I think we also need to really dig deep for empathy, because that's a very privileged thing to say. There are people who are dying, who are losing their family members, who are losing their jobs and all of these things. And if we could just dig down for some more empathy and understanding, then we'd all be better off for it.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Empathy and compassion for others, and to realize that we're all going through this together, and they still don't know. They still don't know how the virus affects people. I've known some people that have had it and have been quite sick, and others that were sick for 2 days with a fever. So it's
I personally think that I might have had it back in March. I was horribly sick for a full week. And so there's a curiosity on my part. Like, I'd love to see if I could get tested for the antibodies, But for now, yeah, I'm deeply concerned for people who have the long-term effects. And so we don't know. We don't know. And it's not that I want us to get used to being shut-ins. What I want is for us to stop being so angry about something that is beyond our control and start to figure out how we can do better as a community altogether.
Right, exactly. Because there's nothing you can do in terms of controlling the virus or anything like that. It is what it is. And rather than focusing on something you can't control, focus on what you can control. The fact that we have this technology that we do, that this is happening, like if this had happened 10 years ago, we wouldn't have had, the same technology we do necessarily. And the fact that we're in our homes and we can connect in this manner, and we can connect globally with anyone.
Yep.
I know a lot of people who have really, pivoted their business and gone global and met so many people that they wouldn't have met otherwise.
Yeah.
Online conferences that are going on that that you can attend, where you don't have to, fly. Like I've attended things that I have always wanted to, but of course I didn't want to, the whole plane and accommodation, all that. Now that,
Sure. I literally just spoke at a conference in Melbourne last week, and I spoke at a conference in Los Angeles. I've spoken in conferences in Berlin and Switzerland. I love in my particular industry, what I'm grateful for is we're starting to see the use of the online conferences and also more accessibility. Like we have live captioning of speakers is really important to me. As somebody who's hard of hearing from a deaf family, I'm excited because now we're thinking about the accessibility thing, and people from marginalized communities who wouldn't be able to afford to go to these conferences, they now have access to this information. Right. They can improve their careers. I'm grateful that the industry that I'm in is very tech-based. And a lot of people were already working from home. And so it wasn't a huge transformation for them, but it's the loneliness piece. It's the I miss people face to face. My husband and I have only socially seen 6 people in 7 months. That's it. And these are people that are, they're in our bubble, but even last weekend, for Thanksgiving weekend, the 2 people that were in our bubble, they spend lots of time with other people. I'm like, nope. We're just going to have to catch you in a couple months when I know that you have decreased your activity because your bubble has gotten too big and I don't want to be part of that bubble.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I do. I do miss seeing people and it was nice through the summer because at least you could meet and sit with people in the backyard or things like that, but outside. And now as we're getting into cooler weather, it's not going to be the same. So it's going to go back to having Zoom parties, which is fine too. But yeah, that's the one thing I do miss is physically being in the same room with people. But again, I'm so grateful for this technology because I've connected with way more people than I ever would have in the last 7 months. And had great conversations. So in some ways it's been really a good time to, that's what I heard from a lot of people, that they've had just better conversations.
Yeah.
Deeper meaning, I guess, as we all, we're all going through this and we realize how precious life is and that, as well, we know that we're all one big community.
We are
of humans, and we all need to come together as one and work. Live in harmony and work together to make the world a better place.
Well, it's been a pleasure to watch your business grow over the last couple of years, because I think I was at one of your first your launch party way back when. And seeing the beautiful work that you do. I'm not much of a necklace person, but I've always admired your pieces because they're stunning. They're absolutely stunning. So hopefully hopefully that business will continue to grow and that you will hit your target of being able to have your pieces on people who are seen in public and seen in magazines and drive that deserved business to you, Michele. And I love what you've done with this. I think this is an amazing way to pivot and also just to bring value not only to yourself and to your guests, but also everybody that's watching your show.
Yeah, it's really these conversations have helped me go through these last 7 months, and I know a lot of people. The feedback I've received from so many people is the same thing. That it just shows how we're all feeling the same things, and as we're going through this, but we just have to, it's all about perspective, as you were saying, and how you look at what's happening. And there's all kinds of opportunities, and we have a chance to create something totally new.
Yeah, exactly.
In so many manners. So thank you so much, Jean, for your time. I will be putting this interview up as well, and I'll put your contact information.
Thank you. Well, it's been a delight, and keep up the amazing work. I really appreciate what you're bringing to the world.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right, everyone. Bye.
Bye.